Welcome, Jayne, to The Root of Our Health. It is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, I'm just delighted to be here, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me.
Great. So, I love to start every episode with it's called a rapid fire questions. And these are 5 questions just for my audience to get to know you a little bit better. So, how does that sound?
That sounds great.
Great. So, the first one is, where did you grow up?
International Falls, Minnesota. It's right on the Canadian border. It's called the Icebox of the Nation.
Nice, nice. And so then where do you live now?
I live in Plymouth, Minnesota. It's in the Twin Cities, of Minnesota. Yep. So,
Okay. So Minnesota person.
oh
Nice.
yeah, born and bred.
Nice. Great, great. So Midwest all the way. Gotta love it. So who are your 2 top mentors?
Wow, 2 top mentors. Christine Kane is definitely one, and then a friend of mine, Kat Breet.
Nice. And who's Christine Kane, if I may ask really quick?
Christine Kane is a leader coach, primarily for female entrepreneurs.
Okay,
And so I'm
beautiful.
doing her year-long program right now. So she pops into my mind right away when I think about mentors.
Great. We'll have to look her up. And then what are you most passionate about?
Money. Money
Yes.
and finance and women. I am fortunate to be able to follow my passion, and I left my corporate career 2 years ago to provide financial education for women. And so that absolutely is my passion.
Great. We'll definitely get into that. And then last but certainly not least, what is your superpower?
My superpower is helping women understand this topic.
Great. Great. So now we're going to get into who you are. So, what is your background and how did you get started in financial wellness?
So I have spent 34 years in wealth management, working for one of the wealthiest families in the United States. Was actually how I got started in finance and investments. And it was really an accident. I didn't really plan to go into investments, but that's where things led. And I feel like I've just been so incredibly fortunate and kind of hit the career jackpot because I absolutely fell in love with it and really enjoyed being able to build relationships with clients and help them achieve their financial goals. And then 2 years ago, I decided to leave and start Elegant Wealth because I observed a gap in the financial education that, well, both men and women really have received, but I really observed the impact that it has on women in particular. And so I really wanted to focus on helping women understand this area of their lives.
Great. And I love how you used your last name in your brand. Elegant. I
You.
love that. That is
Yeah.
perfect. And yes, it's not really common, first off, to be in something for such a long time and still continue being your passion. A lot of times now people kind of pivot or zigzag and kind of, they're in something one time and then, I'm not too passionate about it. Let me get into something else and kind of get into something else. So it's great that you were from the get go loving this industry and it, basically creating your own professionalism and your own experience into helping other women. So that is great.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's been, like I said, it has just been a fantastic career.
Great. So, why? I have a question here. So, why is taking care of your finances such an important thing in our lives?
Well, the statistics are pretty clear and they're a little staggering and they can be a little depressing, but I think they're really important to understand. The first one is that 8 out of 10 women will end up on this journey alone, whether you never marry, you're divorced, or you're widowed. So, at some point in time, you probably will need to step up and take responsibility for your financial situation. So that's one of the biggest ones. Two of the other statistics, half of marriages end in divorce. And while we all want to believe that our marriage is wonderful and it wouldn't happen to us, half of marriages end in divorce. So, the reality is that it could happen. The other thing that's happening around divorce, and I've just heard, some couples that I've been just really surprised about in the last couple of weeks who are getting divorces. And, there's a new term that's been coined. It's called gray divorce. And that is the term that's being used for couples that are getting divorced over the age of 50. And I just am finding it really surprising how many couples, have been married 30 years, 40 years, and they're getting a divorce. And so, it's not just people who have only been married 5, 10 years. It's every age. And so that's another statistic. And then the third one, which I find to be actually the scariest, is the average age of widowhood in the United States is 59. In the United States, I'm not talking about emerging countries here. I'm talking about in the United States, the average age of widowhood is 59. So,
Wow.
You put all of those statistics together, Elizabeth, and that is why women need to understand this topic.
Yeah, and I heard about it. Those are scary, statistics. It's something that kind of smacks you in the face, right?
Yes.
Wakes you up, hopefully. But I have heard, more older couples are getting divorced, and I hear it's just because people stay married because of the kids, and then once the kids are out of the house and on their own, then what? Then you have each other. And if it wasn't great in the beginning, it's not going to be, better afterwards. So that's
Well,
scary though. Yeah.
it is. And it's not even, I think what's also happening is, I think you see a lot where it is the empty nest syndrome, where all of a sudden they're looking at each other going, who are you? And I don't know if I
Yeah.
like you anymore. But it's also happening when couples are retiring.
Yeah.
They
And there's
retire,
nothing. Yes.
and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait
What
a
do I
minute,
do?
we're together all day, every day.
Yes.
Thing when you were going to work and you had time apart, but all of a sudden now. And so that's what I just in the last couple of weeks, I've had found out about two couples who I'm just shocked by, that they've just recently retired and they're getting divorced.
I'm sure COVID also did, not just for older, but,
Yeah.
with going along with what you said, being together in one area for such a long time, and not, it's definitely brought on, I'm sure, a lot more divorces. But we won't get stuck on that topic. I just wanted to, obviously get an understanding of how important, being financially stable is in our lives, especially as women. And I know that the older, and again, we bring up the older generation, the midlife, the women over 40 who are my listeners, a lot of them were brought up to be the head of household, and not to have their own business and not to work. A lot of us, me in Gen X, is we actually started out the 80s working, the working mom and all of that. So it's kind of like, you get your best of, you get the both sides, right? You get the homemaker, where the father brings home all the money, and then you get the women who are like, no, I want to make my own money. um, but I also see in either of those two things, still women have such a hard time with their finances. So what can you explain why the difference of the gender, ability to keep our finances in check? What is that? Why is there such a difference?
Well, I think it's a variety of things. And, UBS, one of the largest global financial institutions, did a study in 2020 called Own Your Worth. And in that, they said that 49% of women defer long term financial decisions to their husband or spouse.
Mm.
And they kind of bucketed the responses. And the first one was lack of confidence. And I hear that from so many of the women that I work with, that it's just an area that nobody's ever really talked to them about. And I hear so often from women, they say, oh, my brain just doesn't do math, or I'm not good at numbers. And so they extrapolate that to into letting themselves believe that they can't handle the money or the finances. But you know what? Women are smart, and we are so capable of doing this. And so I think part of it is shifting that mindset. And I had a woman who went through my course, and she had said exactly those words to me: my brain doesn't do math. And about halfway through the program, she said, she had this like aha moment. And she said, Jayne, she said, we're really doing very little math here. She said, it's more about gathering data. And I like gathering data. So, I think it's helping yourself make that shift. And it doesn't happen overnight usually. Hers was pretty pretty quick, but it's starting to change the how we're talking to ourselves and what we're telling ourselves about our capabilities, because I know that every woman is perfectly capable of handling. This isn't rocket science, trust me. It's not that complicated. But I think there's a couple of things. We've led ourselves to believe that we're not capable. I mean, I had another really smart friend say to me, I was getting an A in honors math in my junior year in high school, and yet I didn't think I was smart enough to sign up for honors math my senior year. And it's like, what on earth led her to believe that? And yet she did. And so I think, it's starting to shift that mindset that, no, we are capable and we can do this. So I think that's a big part of it, is that money mindset. But we have to gain that confidence and start to focus on it. And then the second thing second reason that women said that they deferred those financial decisions is complacency. It was just easier, even though if it wasn't real, that the other person understood the topic. It was just easier to just let them handle it. And then others are the entrenched roles, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think we're still following the same role models that our parents held, right? I mean, so if we watched our dad handle all the financial decisions, then that's what we are continuing to expect with our own relationships. And it's interesting, when I've talked to women like myself, my mom actually was the one who handled all the finances and made the investment decisions. And so I think that's part of the reason why it didn't faze me to walk into this career around investments. But I think for so many women, that wasn't the role model that they had. And so they think, well, I'm not supposed to do that. He's supposed to do that. And so again, I think it's starting to shift. I mean, it's amazing to me that we're still following the role models that have been established for generations. And we're not pushing through those. And then the fourth one was really just wanting to keep the peace in the relationship. So not wanting to ruffle feathers if he was handling it, don't want to disrupt anything or make him feel like we think he's not capable. But, I think we need to start stepping into that role and fully embracing it.
Yeah. No, and I completely agree with first of all, the mindset, right? When we tell ourselves, I'm not good at math, well, then you're not going to be good at math. I mean, because
Right.
you're already telling yourself that. So that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to come back to you, is
Yep.
that whole mindset. So if you tell yourself, oh, this isn't hard, or I can do this, then you can take it on. And you're right, it's not rocket science. It's just a knowledge of, data, like you said, or just knowledge of your finances and keeping on top of it. But I do also agree with having your your family history in play too. And it's not just like who owns the money, the finances, but
Yep.
it's also how your parents talked about money,
Absolutely.
in the home. Like a lot of times, I don't know about you, but I grew up, money doesn't grow on trees. Or, you have, what was it my mom said? Do you have champagne taste but beer pockets? So it's, and so you kind of, when you grow up hearing that, and then you kind of, that's in your head all the time, you won't have the best relationship with finances. And then that's when you kind of like, well, I'm not good at it. And then you, I think it's at that point, then you said, you can handle it because I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
But so then how do we shift it? How do you, your clients, how do you have them go through that transformation?
Yeah. So I created a curriculum specifically for women because the other thing is that this industry has been very male dominated, very masculine. And I think a lot of the terminology is very unwelcoming to women. And so I think it's easy for us to say, oh, yeah, I'm just not even gonna try to figure that all out. And it's not for me. And so I created what I call the 6 pillars to financial empowerment. And the first pillar is all about your money values and beliefs. And because I think that is so essential to understand what you heard growing up, just like what you were saying, money doesn't grow on trees, or, whatever those, I mean, my dad told me, marry a rich man,
Mm-hmm.
that was, it was like, go marry somebody rich. And that's, and rather than make the money yourself, it was, so I mean, so you get those messages, but taking a step back, which we almost never do, and actually thinking about that, and then kind of talking about it with other people. And so a big part of what happens in my courses is that women are coming together to actually share these stories for the first time and dig into why they feel the way they do about money. And so because I'm just a big believer that money intertwines with really every aspect of your life. It impacts your relationships. you know ha, have you ever had a fight with a loved one over money?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
it's so emotional, and yet
Yeah.
we never step back and wonder why this is happening, and actually take the time to think about it. And so, one of the exercises that I have women do is I call it the My Family Tree exercise, and I have them, lay themselves out in the middle, and then draw their parents and their grandparents, any children, grandchildren, and then their spouse off to the side, and then start thinking about and writing down what are those money messages that I heard and how are they impacting me today. And then if you're married, have your husband or spouse go through that same exercise, and then have a conversation around it. And it can be incredibly revealing that you're approaching money so differently, and that's what's causing the friction.
Mhm.
And so so I think that's just a really important starting point for anybody, is really taking a step back and understanding those money values and beliefs that you grew up with, and then starting to have that awareness around, okay, what are the money beliefs that I'm telling myself, and how can I start to shift those?
Got it. And it's also, I think, communication is key that you just mentioned there too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And and having that conversation when you're not in the middle of a fight
Right, right. That's
about
the
money.
worst time.
So when everybody's calm,
Yes.
and just taking the time to communicate about it, because
Yeah.
it's just, I think it's something we avoid talking about. I There's statistics that say most people would rather talk about their death than talk about money.
That's
And
crazy.
when I was managing money for people, you know you, I always felt like I was their best friend, because they had shared something that was so intimate that they probably had never talked to their true best friend about.
Mhm.
So I knew something about them, and so they would share everything with me because I already knew about their financial situation.
Yeah. Yeah. You're kind of like their psychologist a bit.
Well, there's
Your
different.
money psychologist.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Did you want to touch on the other 5 pillars, or do you just want
Sure.
to?
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
go
yeah,
ahead.
love to. Yeah. So the second pillar is all it's kind of reach your destination, or what are your financial goals? And it's looking at, what do you want to achieve with your wealth? What is it that's truly important to you when it does come to money? And so, really establishing, what it is you're going to be shooting for. And so I think that's a really important component. And that really goes hand in hand with the third pillar. And the third pillar is your financial starting point. And I believe that's your understanding your net worth. what that number is, because, your net worth is where you're at today, so it's taking all of your assets, all the things you own and the market values and adding those up. So your home, your savings account, retirement accounts, looking at your liabilities. So what do you owe? So your mortgage, car loans, student loans, anything like that. It's taking your assets minus your liabilities equals your net worth. And that's where you're at today. And I've had so many women, say to me, Jayne, I don't want to do this exercise because, I don't have much to write down, or it's going to be a negative number, whatever that is. And so they don't want to address it. And I very gently encourage them to do it anyway, because I think it's a really powerful number to know your starting point. And again, I think it can be a benchmark, a gauge that can really propel you forward. And that's what the women who've not wanted to do it have said, that it really was powerful to actually see it on paper.
Yeah, because once you see it, once it's there live in front of you, I mean, you can't obviously turn back. It's what it is. It's fact.
It is.
And sometimes the truth hurts, but we need to know in order, if we want to grow or get better at this, we need to understand what our baseline is, like you said. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think that's such an important number. And so understanding that, so that's pillar 3. And we talk about a lot of other numbers that you should know as well.
Mhm.
And I would say the net worth one's kind of sneaky because it's actually a lot of numbers rolled into one, but
Yeah.
it's a good one. And then pillar 4, I call spending with purpose. And I am not a fan of what I call the B word, budget. And so I talk about it a little bit differently. I call it treasures, promises, and joy. And so what are you saving for tomorrow's treasures? What past promises have you already made? So your mortgage, your, utilities, those types of things. And then whatever is left over is for today's joy. And so looking at it a little bit, and again, the terminology has just been so masculine. And to me, budget sounds like punishment.
Yes. Thank
And
you. I actually said the word yesterday. I said we have to be on a budget. And I like cringed every time I said it. I was just like, there has to be a better way. So thank you.
yes, it is. There is a better way. It's called treasures, promises, and fun. And so,
Nice.
and I think, looking at it from that perspective, again, a big part of what I want to do is make this world more welcoming and inviting to women. And because I think that's part of the mindset, is that we just view it as not pleasant, not interesting, don't want to deal with it. And so I think if we can start to turn that around, it's just going to make a really big difference in our lives. And so that's how I talk about spending, because we need to understand what we're spending, right? I mean, you really do need to understand, how much money is coming in, how much am I spending, where are we spending it? So you do really need to understand that. But I think if we can just, look at it a little bit differently than budget, it might make it a little bit more pleasant and interesting. So, and then pillar 5 is my favorite. It's all about investments. So I call it learn to speak investments.
Uh-huh.
And, there I've got some really fun analogies that I use. Like I use the analogy of an outfit to help women understand the difference between stocks, bonds, real estate, and commodities and cash. And, again, I just think trying to find ways that, and again, some women have said, well, I'm not really much into fashion. And it's like, it's not really about the fashion piece, right? We all have to get dressed in the morning.
Right.
But giving you a way to connect the dots when, if you are working with a financial advisor or planner, when they're talking about stocks and bonds, so you're starting to understand, oh yeah, I remember Jayne said the stocks are your top, the bonds are your bottoms, so they're starting to remember, and understand, so that they're following the conversation better. Because if somebody's talking and using language that you don't understand, you're going to tune out.
Yeah.
I mean, you just are. I mean, that's just the way we are, right? I mean, we're going to stop paying attention. But if somebody's saying it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually understanding this now, it's going to be a whole different conversation. And that conversation about your money is what impacts your future.
Yeah.
And so getting engaged in that conversation is so incredibly important. So understanding the language of investments, because if you want to grow your money, you need to be investing your money. That is how you're going to grow your wealth.
Agree.
Putting it
Yeah.
into a savings account that's earning absolutely nothing. I mean, obviously we have to start with saving. I mean, that's important, but to grow it, you're going to need to understand investments.
Well, I love that you put it to where, women can understand more. Because, like you said, stocks, bonds, all of this stuff that has been, and I try reading it, I try understanding it, and I still don't. So it's like, I want to invest. I know how important that is, but it's still the whole thing of, well, what does that, so how am I at risk, am I high risk, low risk, where did it go, what, market, all this. And my husband's good at it, and then our accountant, obviously he says we'll leave it to the accountant. And of course, like you said, we should not do that. We should know, because obviously it is our money, it is our hard work, and what we worked for. We have to understand where it's going and how it's growing.
Yep.
So yeah, I love how you just put the correlation together, because
Yeah.
it makes it easy for us to
It
understand.
does. Yeah. And, I mean, and, I think the other thing is that, you know, it, you know your situation better than anybody else.
Hmm.
And so if you're letting somebody else make those decisions for you, there are things that they don't know about you. And there are things that they don't know about what you desire in the future. And oftentimes I think the industry is getting better at having those conversations around, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? Historically, I don't think that has been as strong. Um, it hasn't been happening as much. And so I think it's happening more, but you are going to be the one who knows your situation better than anybody else. And so if you're not participating in that conversation, you could end up somewhere, 20 years from now that wasn't where you wanted to be.
Yeah, and I say this about health. It's the same thing about your own health. Like, what's going on in the world, the doctors and everybody trying to tell you how to take better care of yourself. But your own body, what your own lifestyle is. So having somebody on the outside telling you what you should and should not do, I disagree with that. I
Yeah.
completely, and that's where, me as a functional health coach, that is where I meet them on their level. And I don't want to say level in terms of, good or bad. It's more or less like, who are you as a person? What do you love? Like you said, your desires. What is your lifestyle like? Like,
Yeah.
same thing with finances. If somebody was to tell you to be volatile in the market, and yet you're older, or, you like to play it a little bit safer, well, that's not good advice.
Yeah.
So it's understanding yourself, and then obviously asking the questions, right? Because that's key, is asking the right question. So then what are the questions that they should be asking?
Yeah. So, well, finish up. So the sixth pillar, I'll just
Oh
finish up.
yeah,
So
sorry.
the sixth pillar is all about wealth protection. And so it gets into estate planning and insurance. And those are really important components of understanding your overall situation. And I don't care if you're, 30 or you're 70, those are areas that, because it's going to be like your insurance needs are going to be very different
Mhm.
at different seasons of life, right? And so I think, truly understanding where you're at and what you should be, paying attention to. I mean, if you've just had a child, you should definitely have, a basic will in place, right? So that names a guardian in case something happens to you.
Mhm.
And, and then as your financial situation becomes more complex, you should be potentially setting up trusts and setting, I mean, so it really differs based on, where you're at in your life. And so I think, again, just another component that you really need to understand. about your situation and really truly have your arms around it. So yeah, so I mean, questions, I mean, I think it's really just getting engaged. And if somebody, one of the biggest things that I tell women that they've said, oh my gosh, hearing that was one of the most important things I heard the entire time, is I tell women, you have the right to ask questions. Because I think so oftentimes we think, well, I don't really understand it, so I shouldn't ask a question because I'm not really getting it. So I'll just sit here and pretend like it's making sense to me,
Right.
because at this point I feel like I should understand it, and so I just won't ask questions. And what I tell women is ask questions. If they're saying something that you're not understanding, ask what it means. And I think most of us in the field, we're delighted to explain something and to educate. I mean, I always viewed education as a big part of my role
Yeah.
when I was working with clients, in that capacity. And I loved it when they asked me a question, but I think we are so, we're living in that world. And so sometimes we don't realize that we're using terminology that isn't connecting for somebody. And so, I think the first and foremost, ask questions, because this is your money, it's your life, it impacts you. And so you have every right. And if they're not explaining it in a way that you understand, that's on them, not
Right.
on you.
Right.
And so keep asking, or ask somebody else, or find a book or find somebody who's explaining it in a way that you understand,
Yeah.
so that you can get involved in this conversation.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, because it's important to know rather than to just say, it's okay. I
I'll
don't
just
care.
I'll just let it
I'll just let
yeah
it
I'll
go
just let
over.
it
I'll have them deal with it. Right.
Yeah.
Because they know what they're doing. Right.
And
But yeah,
they may and they may not. I mean, I'm assuming they know what they're
they
doing,
know what they're doing.
but
But
are
yeah.
they really applying it to what's important to you?
Right.
And one of the first exercises that I have women do before we even get into the 6 pillars is we do a values exercise. Because I think your overall values lead into what's important to you with regards to your financial situation. And so I really think that's an important, to just kind of go back to the basics and say, okay, what are my core values? And I'm sure that's something that you talk about a lot, but I don't think it often gets connected to money.
No,
I think
it's
that's really important as well.
yeah, I do too. I do too. So then, then what should women stop doing with their finances?
Stop doing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think anybody asked me that. Stop doing. Well, I think that the biggest thing is just to stop deferring the decisions, right? I mean, stop. I mean, I will have so many women, I'll tell them what I'm doing and they say, oh, well, I'm good. My husband's handling all of that. And it's like, that's the exact point.
Yes.
That's exactly
Stop.
what I'm talking about. Your husband is handling it.
Yeah.
And, so I think it's stop deferring, get involved, get engaged, and stop deferring the decision making. And and I get it, we divide and conquer.
Mhm.
If you're raising a family, you might be working, I mean, there's so much to get done. And so the easy thing is to say, you get the groceries, I'll handle the kids' doctor appointments, you handle the finances, you divide and conquer. But this isn't an area to divide and conquer. This is an area where you both need to be involved and engaged. And so I just encourage you to stop deferring.
Okay. And on top of that, because obviously we have to again communicate with our husbands if we have, a husband. Um, in that circumstance, what so what if like, your husband is one that likes to spend and you are the one that likes to save. How does that conversation go?
Yeah. And again, I think going back to those money values and beliefs and that family tree exercise is going to be a really great starting point. So starting with that, because I had one woman say to me, she said, her mother had grown up very wealthy in an emerging country. And then, the government was overthrown and her family had to leave and lost everything, came to the United States. And she said, as a result, her mother was very frugal, very focused on saving every penny and building that wealth number. And she said, as a result, she, as the daughter, was wanted nothing, it was like if she had money, she was spending it, and she was, she was going to enjoy it. And she said, so she took the exact opposite stance as a result. And then when her mom died and she inherited this nest egg that her mom had so carefully saved, she wanted to be a good steward of that. But so I think we all react differently to how we've been raised and the messages that we've heard. Sometimes we take the exact opposite role. But I think, again, having that conversation and understanding why he's approaching money so differently than you are. And then, again, when you're not in a fight about money, having that discussion around, well, how can we maybe make some changes? So maybe if it's a purchase that's over $500 or $1,000 or whatever that amount is, we have a conversation with each other before making that decision. So I think laying some boundaries is a really good way to start to understand, how each other's working, and then you're continuing to have that conversation. And so looking at your money situation together too, that's going to be another way to, you're doing the treasures, promises, and joy, so if you're actually laying that all out and you're saying, wow, look at how much we're spending in this particular area, but we could maybe be increasing the amount of money we're putting into our retirement account if we weren't spending so much here, and so I think I always talk about, it's thinking about how much you're spending on your current self versus your future self. And, do I really need that $100 sweater today? Or,
Carpe diem, right?
right, it
I'm
really
kidding.
is. I mean,
I'm
and
kidding.
it's easy to just spend in the moment. And, there's a lot of retail therapy and, so wherever it is that the other person might be spending, but not doing it in a, not putting them on the defensive, but just talking about, why do we approach money differently? How can we maybe work through this? What are some boundaries that we could put in place that will be helpful so that I'm not getting upset when you spend $1,000 on whatever without talking to me. So
Yeah, so my husband and I have I put it together, but it's a need or want. We
yeah,
have like a need or want bucket.
yeah,
Now, he'll say, I would like this, A, B, and C, whatever. Well, is that a need or is that a want? And then if we put it in the want bucket, obviously we list out, how much, and if whatever the needs kind of over exceed, you know, now I'm not using budget anymore, but over exceed, then some of that needs or that want stuff will have to wait. So
yeah,
that's the kind of thing I use, is because, a lot of times it's like, well, I need it. Well, do you really need it? Like, do you really need a shirt that you had like three different shirts or three of the same shirts in the closet that you haven't worn? Do you really need it? So that's the kind of thing I like to put in our lives, is the need or
yeah,
want system. So I
yeah,
mean, I guess whatever helps, get that communication going, get that, it's the knowledge and the awareness. So
it is. Yeah. And again, I just think we don't like talking about money. We've all, most of us grew up hearing, you don't talk about money. That's
Mhm.
just not appropriate. One story, one woman shared with me, she lives in Montana, or Wyoming, sorry, Wyoming, and it's around a lot of ranchers. And she said her dad told her one time, you never ask somebody how many head of cattle they have, because then you could calculate how how much money they have, what they're worth.
Ah,
And I thought
ah,
that was a really interesting, but yeah,
yeah.
you were never to ask that question. And so again, I think we were taught, you don't talk about money. It's not polite. And so, but we need to talk about money. And one of the big things I'm why I'm doing the group coaching classes is because it gets women to actually talk about it and start to get comfortable with talking about it. And I'm always encouraging women to, break that money is taboo barrier and bring it up with your girlfriends.
Yeah.
Start having, I mean, having that conversation saying, well, how are you handling money, between the two of you? And does one of you spend more or does one spend less? And actually asking your girlfriends that question. We so often we get together with our friends because we love talking about things and it normalizes us, right? So we say, are you experiencing this? Because I'm experiencing this, but if I know you are, then I feel like, okay, well, I'm normal. But
Right.
we're never talking about money.
Right.
And so I think it's one of those things that I really encourage women to start talking about.
Yeah, especially like we mentioned before, it gives you confidence, right?
Exactly.
Knowing and understanding, because then once that confidence, you have that confidence, it's not going to show up just in the family household, but your workplace, right? Because that's, I think, a lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the reason why women don't ask for raises a lot, or don't, or if they are, going in there for, a raise, they're undercutting what they're actually worth. So having that confidence, having that understanding of, how what is money and how can it work for me, will definitely also help in the business world. So
Absolutely. Oh, you're
yeah.
you're so right, Elizabeth. I mean, I think we have absolutely done ourselves a disservice again by not talking about it, because I do think that men do share more about that. And so I think men walk into that negotiation that you're talking about so much better prepared than we are as women because we aren't sharing that information.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I know, as us as women, we want to, we're givers, right? We're more or less like giving, and when we ask for something, it's kind of like, oh, no, 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 it's okay, I don't need it, right?
Yeah,
But I think the stronger that we are in our finances and understanding, the stronger we are in that negotiation. So I'm empowering every woman, and so are you, to get this, get this in our lives every day. So
yes.
Jayne, I just want to, I love having you on here because again, we haven't had a discussion like this on my podcast. So, and I know that this is such a hot topic. This is such a needed topic, especially as we get older, especially as, like use the statistics, the scary statistics, not only the divorces, but the widowhood. We need to understand as women, how can we empower ourselves to understand about money, not get scared of it, and to know how it can work for us, like that investment piece, right? So I just
Yeah.
want to acknowledge you for being that light for women, that it's okay, and how you present it to women and kind of make it easier for us to understand, and make it in a feminine way and not so masculine. I just want to acknowledge you for showing up like that every day. So thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for being on my podcast. But I do have one more question for you.
All right.
Actually, before we get into that, how can people find you? And
Oh,
do you offer? Is there any offers that you have right now?
I do. So yeah, you can check out my website at www.elegantwealth.com, and elegant is spelled with two L's like my last name.
Mhm.
So I do offer programs. I offer a couple times a year, I offer a 6-week challenge that's entirely virtual. So anybody from anywhere can join that, which is a lot of fun. And then a couple times a year, I offer an in-person group coaching program, so that you have to be in the Twin Cities. So that one doesn't work for everybody. But and then I also I have a book. I just published a book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
Okay.
financial empowerment for women. So I wanted to be able to reach as many women as possible. So the book is available on my website or on Amazon.com and Barnes and Noble. So It,
Great. Are you
it's
on any social media, or is it just the website and the book that they could?
Nope, I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So
Perfect.
always posting and letting people know what I'm up to. I do a lot of speaking engagements, and a lot of my speaking engagements are often open to the public as well. So anybody can, and always for women. And so a lot of those have been virtual here. I'm hoping we're going to be going back to some in person coming up, but the virtual have been great because anybody can join in.
Yeah, that's great. I'll be sure to link everything up in the show notes. So all my listeners have to do is click, and they're right where you need them. So
Oh,
thank
good.
you.
Thank
So
you.
the last question that I have is, do you have your favorite quote or any words of inspiration?
Well, I think I have a couple things that I wanted to share here at the end. So, first and foremost, it's never too late and it's never too early to start learning about this. So, wherever you're at, forgive yourself for anything that's happened in the past. You can't change it, just move forward. And so, start learning now. I just really think that's important. And then, I think the other thing is, um, your money, your financial situation is never going away. It's going to be with you every single day. And so create a positive relationship with money because you're going to have daily interactions. So just build that relationship and make it a good one.
That's great. And I agree. You're never too old,
No,
never too young.
never.
So, yes, and take care of it now, basically.
Yes.
So, thank you so much, Jayne. It was such a great pleasure to have you on here to share your knowledge and share all of this. So, I appreciate you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. And it's been my pleasure.
Well, have a great rest of your day then.
You too.
Thank you.